Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel and happy Halloween. It's October 31st. It's that time of the year where everyone is entitled to at least one good scare. Now, even though I already completed my annual series of retro horror reviews, I wanted to make one more video on this channel for the Halloween season. So as you all know, this is the 10-year anniversary of this channel. If you didn't know, you must be a new subscriber. In that case, welcome. But 10 years ago, I made a list of, I think, my 10 favorite movies and TV specials to watch around this time of the year. I wanted to make an updated list on that because clearly a lot has changed. I developed more of a unique personality for this channel. I've seen more movies, so I feel like this list is worth updating. And again, with it being the 10-year anniversary of this channel, there's no better time to update it than right now. So let's get this started. These are my picks for my top 15 favorite movies and specials to watch around Halloween. Now, before I get started with this list, there are three things that you'll need to be aware of. First of all, there's going to be a lot of movies here that may not have anything to do with Halloween, but they put me in the Halloween spirit. Two, there are some movies that actually made it to my top 100 list, accompanied by a lot of movies that did not make the list. So while the movies that appeared in my top 100 list are obviously better films, some of these other movies just put me in the Halloween spirit more. And finally, number three, there's going to be a lot of ties. I'll explain later once I get into the list, but there were a lot of picks that I couldn't choose specifically, so I just lumped them into one spot. And without further ado, let's get this started. Number 15. Werewolf by Night. This is relatively new. It just premiered last year on Disney+, but I think it's an excellent Halloween special because it's got a dark, gothic atmosphere that fits perfectly with the classic Universal monsters. It has a really creepy atmosphere and manages to stay self-contained, even though it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so you don't have to watch anything else prior to watching Werewolf by Night. The special effects are great, the action scenes are fun, gory, but not to a point where it's rated R, just enough where it's a hard PG-13, or I guess TV-14 in this case. The makeup effects for Werewolf by Night are fantastic. Michael Giacchino's direction and score are great. I really like the characters, and Man-Thing is just a great mixture of innocent yet violent if you piss him off. It's a really fun watch, and even though I know the colored version came out on Disney Plus just this year, I have no desire to watch it because this special really worked because it was in black and white. Not to mention that it ends in color, so why? Number 14. A Nightmare on Elm Street. This had to be included. This movie is in my top 100 favorite movies list. It's a really genius idea when it comes to reinventing the slasher genre. It's wildly imaginative. It's got a great score, that creepy 80s synth score that fits perfectly with the Halloween season. And Freddy Krueger is, of course, one of the most classic slasher villains in all of horror history. The characters are very likable and you do root for them. Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp, is one of the pinnacle final girls out there. And it is cool to see Johnny Depp in his first feature film role. I talked about this movie enough when I reviewed it and when I included it in my top 100 list, but Nightmare on Elm Street is just a great movie for the Halloween season. Number 13. The number 13 spot, ironically, goes to my favorite Friday the 13th movie, Jason Lives. This movie is just a ton of fun. It's a great slasher movie that has a sense of humor about itself. It's got a really cool atmosphere. Jason is defined in this movie as being the unstoppable zombie killer that we all know and love. The characters are very enduring. The soundtrack is great, especially He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask, which is one of my favorite songs to listen to this time of the year. And it's not all that gratuitous with the nudity and sex. In fact, there's no nudity in this movie whatsoever. But that being said, the violence and the kills are relatively tame compared to a lot of the other movies that have come before, or some that have come after. This is my favorite of the Friday the 13th movies, and the only one that I would ever say is good. Number 12. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I just recently watched this movie for the first time and reviewed it a couple weeks ago, so I won't spend too much time on this pick. I'll just say that it's a genius idea, having a bunch of clowns going around killing people in really creative and inventive manners. The production design is outstanding, the characters are really endearing and charming, and I love the fact that the finale of the movie technically takes place at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk. I mean, they filmed some of it there, so as a UC Santa Cruz alum, that really made me happy. I don't know, it's a movie that I wish I'd seen earlier because it's so much fun, and it's a perfect gateway horror movie for younger audiences. It's not too violent, it's PG-13, and it's a perfect entry point for people who want to get into horror films. Number 11. The Return of Godzilla. Why is this on the list? Well, outside of the fact that I'm me and I have to find any excuse to talk about Godzilla, this is the only movie in the franchise that really puts me in a Halloween mood. It's got that 80s horror feel to it. The score is very haunting and bombastic. And for some reason, the score always plays in my head whenever I'm at Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. I think the reasoning for this is because when Horror Nights came back to Hollywood in 2006, that was the same year I watched the Japanese version of The Return of Godzilla for the first time. So the score just kind of impacted my life at that point. And while there are technically scarier Godzilla movies like Shin Godzilla and the 1954 film, none of them put me in a Halloween mood the way this movie does. It's just that 80s appeal to it that really makes this worth watching every October. Number 10. It Follows. Easily one of my favorite horror movies of the last decade, and one that also appeared in my list of my top 100 favorite movies of all time. But in that list, it ranked below A Nightmare on Elm Street. So why is it ranked above Nightmare on this list? Well, mainly because it just puts me a little more in the Halloween spirit than Nightmare did. It has a really great look to it. The cinematography is just outstanding. It's got some legit scares. The characters all feel very real. And the score by Disaster Piece is that classic 80s synth score that just dominates my mind whenever it's the Halloween season. And again, whenever I find myself at Halloween Horror Nights, the score to It Follows just fits with the environment for me. More than the dubstep music, more than the hard rock music, the It Follows score is my personal soundtrack for Halloween Horror Nights. And because of all that, it's one that fits perfectly with the Halloween spirit for me. Number 9. The classic Universal monsters. Which one? Let's just say the essential movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, The Bride of Frankenstein, The Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon. All these classic Universal monsters are just all iconic, and I couldn't pick one specifically to put on this list because they're all very important to each other and just fit with this time of the year. Though if I had to pick my favorites, it may have to be between Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, and the original Mummy. But that being said, all these movies are great. The characters are all super iconic. The gothic atmosphere that all these movies hold is just perfection. It's the reason why Werewolf by Night works so well, because they copied the look of these movies. It's just all around fun to watch. I don't see anyone going through the Halloween season without watching at least one of the classic Universal monsters, because they're that essential. Number 8. House. The 1977 Japanese film from Nobuhiko Obayashi and Toho, a movie that I love so much that I forgot to include it in my original recording for this video, so that's why I'm doing it in audio form. I've already reviewed this movie twice before, once 10 years ago, and then again just earlier this month. I absolutely love how bonkers this movie is. It's essentially a haunted house movie, and it's as simple as a plot as it can be, but once you look at it beyond the surface level, it's anything but simple. It's crazy, it's insane, it has a beautiful dreamlike look to it, and a lot of the horror elements fit perfectly with the childlike wonder that this movie has. All the actresses do a phenomenal job. Each of the characters have their distinct and unique quirks and personalities. The special effects are fantastic considering how many techniques they used and considering the year it came out. I love the music. I love the atmosphere. It is a perfect haunted house movie, in my opinion. And it's one of these things that if you've never seen House before, you need to see it, and then you'll hate yourself for not seeing it earlier. Number 7. Alien. This movie ranked in my top 20 of favorite movies of all time. I just absolutely adore this film. It's the perfect horror movie in my opinion, one of the perfect horror movies. It's basically a haunted house movie in outer space. You have all the characters trying to survive this alien creature that's killing them off one after another. There's a certain point where some of them don't trust certain people. The Jerry Goldsmith score is just fantastic. And again, another film score that runs through my head when it comes to Halloween Horror Nights. The characters are fantastic and all the actors do an A+ job with all of them, especially Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley. The xenomorph design is really cool and I love how it can just blend in with the environment. It can hide in plain view, it can ambush you around a corner. Like, this movie, I've always wanted them to make a haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights that was themed specifically to Alien. I mean, they had Alien vs. Predator sometime in the last decade, which I guess is better than nothing, but Alien just seemed so ripe for a Horror Nights house, which sadly we may never get because Disney owns the rights. So that's something that's never going to happen, but at the very least, this movie always puts me in that mood. Number 6. Halloween from 1978. Again, this is another instance where this movie was ranked below Alien in my top 100 list, but it ranked above Alien in this list because it's one of the essential Halloween movies out there. I mean, the holiday's name is in the title. It's the friggin' title of the movie and the franchise. You cannot go throughout this entire month without watching John Carpenter's classic. And it certainly is a classic. The score is outstanding. It's iconic. It's scary as hell. Michael Myers is one of the most defining slasher villains of all time. Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis do a great job. And I love how this movie relies more on creepiness and atmosphere rather than gore and violence. And most of the time, I'd like to just watch this movie as is, with that ending where Michael Myers is thought to be dead, but he escapes. You could just leave that ending for what it is and look out the window thinking that he's out there on Halloween night. Because when I saw this movie for the first time in 2007, that ending scared the hell out of me so much I couldn't sleep for 2 days straight. So that's what I mostly like to do, but sometimes I'd like to follow up that ending. I'd like to either just jump right into Halloween 2, because that movie is just a seamless continuation and features a great synthesizer score, and maybe include Season of the Witch and Halloween 4. Or if I don't feel like watching those movies for whatever reason, I'll follow up the 1978 movie with the 2018 film and just pretend that that movie ends perfectly with Michael Myers dying in the fire and the Strode women going on to live more peaceful lives. Again, I personally recommend that you stick with the 1978 classic by itself, but if you do want to follow it up with some other movies in the franchise, I see no harm in following it up with Halloween 2, 3, 4, and the 2018 movie, just as long as you pretend that Halloween 5, 6, kills and ends don't exist. Number 5. The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Again, much like with the Universal Monsters, I couldn't pick one because they all kind of are essential for the Halloween season. I have not kept up with The Simpsons for a long time. I enjoy the ride to a certain extent, but my interest for The Simpsons kind of dropped off after the movie came out, because for a TV show, once you make it to the movie, it feels like that's the end. But the Halloween episodes are the ones that I always look forward to. They are very clever, very inventive, and I love how they all play out like anthology stories. If I had to pick my favorites though, it would have to be the perfect run of Treehouse of Horrors 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All of them feature my absolute favorite skits and have some instantly quotable lines. Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders. He was a zombie? There's one quote, there's "Go ahead, throw your vote away, ha 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 ha," and I think everyone's favorite, "Boy, you've got the shinin." You mean shining. Shh. You want to get sued? Treehouse of Horror, it's an instant classic during this time of the year, and even if you've fallen off with The Simpsons on a whole, you have to admit that the Treehouse of Horror episodes still deliver. Number 4. Epidemiology, aka the zombie episode of Community. By the time season 2 of the show rolled around, Community had already found its vibe. It already knew what it was a show about and what its tone was, mainly thanks to the paintball episode that Justin Lin directed in season 1. And yes, season 1 did have a Halloween episode, and there'd be another one in season 3, and those are good, but nothing can beat this episode right here. Just a full-blown zombie apocalypse within the school. The comedy is just pitch perfect. The writing is on point. It's got a bunch of pop culture references, especially with Abed and his line, "Be the first black man to make it to the end." It's just fantastic all around. And on top of all that, it made ABBA a staple for Halloween music. ABBA's music just flat out dominates this episode. And prior to it, I didn't think that ABBA could actually work with Halloween or a zombie apocalypse, and it surprisingly does. So I really have to appreciate Dan Harmon for that, especially considering that something that he'll occasionally do throughout the show is spend his own money to get the license to certain songs. So I can't imagine all the ABBA songs played in this episode came cheap. So that's a true accomplishment, and this is just one of my favorite episodes of Community, period. Number 3. Ghostbusters, my favorite comedy of all time. Hands down, I will not accept any debates from this. But yeah, Ghostbusters just puts me in that Halloween spirit because it's funny, it's charming, but it can also be quite creepy, atmospheric, and sometimes scary. When I saw this movie as a kid, there were a few moments that legitimately creeped me out. When the ghosts break out of the fire station and run amok throughout New York, the undead cab driver scared me, and when Slimer popped up out of the hot dog stand, that was the first time I ever saw Slimer, and it scared the crap out of me. The first time I saw this movie was more in chunks, so that being the first time I saw Slimer really scared me. But it's just a ton of fun. It's a perfect movie for the Halloween season, and I think like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, it can work as a perfect gateway horror movie, even though it's more a comedy. I think the horror elements work so well that anybody that's not into horror movies can at least appreciate this and watch it during this time of the year. I don't know. I really just love Ghostbusters. I could talk about it endlessly. I could quote it for hours, but I gotta move on. There are 2 other movies or specials that I gotta talk about in this video. Number 2. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Of course, this had to be on the list. It is the quintessential TV special this time of the year. It's got a really great fall look to it. The Peanuts' sense of humor and look to it is undeniably charming. It's really funny, it's heartfelt, and it perfectly encompasses what it was like to be a kid around this holiday. Going out trick-or-treating with your friends, showing off the candy that you got, or rocks if you were that hated by society, and going to Halloween parties, bobbing for apples, and just hanging out with your friends. It was a really good time, and this special always brings back those memories. Unless you were one of the weird kids that actually went out to a pumpkin patch and waited for the Great Pumpkin. Which if you did, hey, that's how you spend your Halloween, and I got no judgment against you. And then of course there's the music by Vince Guaraldi, which is just as good as ever, and it perfectly fits with the Halloween spirit just as much as it fits with the Christmas season. And that's really difficult to pull off, in my opinion, have a piece of music that fits perfectly with 2 completely different holidays. But yeah, this TV special is an absolute classic, and you'd have to have a strong heart of stone to not like it. If you did that, you probably put it in Charlie Brown's candy bag, which shame on you. That kid deserves some candy. Number 1. Trick or Treat. This is hands down the quintessential Halloween movie in my opinion, because the look of this movie just screams Halloween. It's got a perfect orange glow with all those jack-o'-lanterns. It features a bunch of characters who celebrate Halloween in many different ways, and it's essentially an anthology movie with several different stories that eventually tie in through one link, and that being Sam, who is an icon himself. There's no real Halloween mascot, so I think Sam fits perfectly with being the Halloween mascot. He is pretty much to the Halloween season what Santa Claus is to the Christmas season, just that one icon that defines the holiday. Michael Dougherty really did a bang-up job with this movie, and the fact that he's working on a sequel makes me excited. I'm not holding up high hopes that it's going to be as good as the original film here, but it would be nice to revisit this world and revisit Sam again, because this is such a unique, creative, and inventive movie, and one that is really essential for this holiday. If you've never seen Trick or Treat, I encourage you to check it out, because you will instantly make this a priority every Halloween after you watch it. And there you go, those are my picks for my favorite movies and TV specials to watch around Halloween. Now I want to apologize right off the bat for not including A Nightmare Before Christmas. There were a lot of movies and TV specials that I wanted to include here, like Scream or Evil Dead 2, that ultimately got booted out because of the other picks that I showed you on this list. Nightmare Before Christmas is a movie that would have never made this list. I'm sorry, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, but it never does anything for me during the Halloween season. It works for me during Christmas, but not Halloween, so that's why it's not featured on the list. But hey, maybe it's on your list. And with that said, I want to know what you guys think about this list. Do you agree with any of them? What are some of your picks for your favorite movies and TV shows on Halloween? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day, take care of yourselves, and happy Halloween!